The first primary has now voted. What impressed you most about last night in New Hampshire?
The depth and breadth of Romney's victory. He won many of the groups we expected him to win, but he also did very well among a lot of other groups. He won Tea Party supporters. He won the votes of voters who said they were very conservative. He won the votes of evangelicals or born-again Christians. Of course, this was a much smaller group in New Hampshire than it was in Iowa, but I think that's still very, very significant. What about you?
I found the same thing. I also thought that it was important that he decisively carried Republicans with over 60% of the vote. Some primaries are open, like New Hampshire's, to independents, but a lot are closed, and it suggests that anything that's closed to registered Republicans, he's going to win even better than he did in Iowa or New Hampshire. I think the fact that he won somewhat conservative voters, the single largest group that votes in Republican Party primaries, he won them with nearly 50% of the vote.
And that's a group you follow very closely.
Yeah, well, they're the group that always wins. Conservatives sometimes get their nominee, moderates sometimes get their nominee, but the somewhat conservatives are the kingmakers of Republican politics, and they want Mitt Romney by large margins.
As did the very conservative voters, so that was an impressive performance last night.
So where do we go from here? What happened? He's won 2 in a row. We go down to South Carolina, which has played the role of kingmaker in the last few elections, and it's a less hospitable terrain for him.
It certainly is less hospitable terrain, but let's look at one thing that we saw in New Hampshire that I think could be significant in South Carolina, and that is the votes of those whose household incomes were less than $50,000 a year. He didn't win that group as decisively as he won other groups, and we've heard a lot now, attacks by Newt Gingrich, attacks by the DNC, on Romney's role at Bain Capital. Could that play a big role in South Carolina?
I think it could. South Carolina really divides neatly into 2 groups now in the Republican primary. The coast and the area around the capital of Columbia tends to be more educated and upscale. That'll be Romney country, but that's less than half of the Republican electorate. The rest comes from what you can call old South Carolina. It's less educated, it's middle class or lower middle class, it's highly evangelical, and these are areas where people have worked in mills, they've worked in with their hands, and I think the Bain Capital attacks could very well galvanize an already suspicious electorate to dislike Romney even more.
In New Hampshire, even though he didn't win the votes significantly of those with household incomes of $50,000 less, he did win the votes of those who said that they and their families were falling behind financially, and I actually thought that was fairly significant.
Yeah, I mean, it suggests that his background isn't an immediate disqualifier. But of course, New Hampshire voters weren't subject to millions of dollars worth of advertising, not simply talking about the generalities of his background, but some of the most unsavory aspects of his past.
It's really interesting how much the South Carolina electorate has already heard about this election. There were 2,800 ads run in New Hampshire. There are over 5,000 that have already been run in South Carolina. And the spending we're going to see in the South Carolina primary is really extraordinary. With the super PACs, with the candidates' own spending, this is going to be a battle royale.
Yeah, well, this will be the first time that Newt Gingrich, because of his super PAC, really is on the airwaves in a way that matches most of his opponents. And he's going to go straight at Mitt Romney, which is not something that Romney's had to experience so far, an aggressive, on the air, highly negative attack. And it'll be interesting both to see the impact of the attacks and how Mitt Romney reacts to them.
And there'll be 2 more debates, is that not correct, before the South Carolina primary?
There will be more.
Yeah, we've certainly had enough already. We found that organization really mattered in Iowa, and it obviously mattered in New Hampshire. What do you think about Romney's organizational strength in South Carolina?
Well, Romney is, increasingly it's becoming clear that Romney is relying on commercial-style micro-targeting. And micro-targeting takes political characteristics and commercial characteristics to put together a file of likely voters, what they like about issues, what they like about a person's personality, and they're using means below the radar screen of telephone calls and mail to communicate with those people. South Carolina has a large niche of likely Romney voters, and my guess is that Romney may not have an on-the-ground operation, but he's got a sub-television operation that is reaching these people through mail and through phone calls from out-of-state operations that will solidify his vote in a way that won't be noticed until Election Day.
Our business is getting pretty sophisticated, but do you think it's over?
Yogi Berra said it ain't over until it's over, but I hear a very large lady singing very loudly in the background.
What about Florida, Henry? What are your thoughts?
Florida will not be influenced as decisively by South Carolina as one might think, because Florida is an electorate that's much more like New Hampshire's than it is like South Carolina's. It's much more upscale, it's much more moderate, it's much more educated, it's much more suitable for Romney. Romney will have one challenge there, which is Latino voters. Florida is the only state where, because of Miami's Cubans, that Latinos are a large part of the electorate. He lost that group decisively to John McCain 4 years ago, and his strong stance against immigration since then can't possibly be helping him too much with that. But that's really the only demographic obstacle to Florida, and Romney's strength and money and organization and profile play very well to the base of Florida Republicans.
He's gotten the endorsement, though, of Senator Rubio, prominent Hispanic, and also the mayor of Miami. Do you think that these Florida endorsements among the Hispanic community will matter?
I think that they can help, but they won't be decisive. Ultimately, the candidates will win or lose the votes on their own. You talked about the number of ads that people have already seen in South Carolina, but Romney's already on the air in Florida. Do you think Florida is an expensive state? It's got multiple media markets. Do you think that Romney's money and advantage and momentum is going to parlay into a on-the-air advantage in Florida?
I think he certainly will have an on-the-air advantage in Florida looking ahead. His organizational strength in state after state is making a difference in this nomination contest. It's been very volatile in many ways, but if you look at base, Romney's organizational strength is really important.
Put yourself in the position of a challenger to Mitt Romney. I mean, we've identified Romney's strengths organizationally, message-wise, personally. What do you do if you're for, let's say, Rick Santorum, who so far has only shown strength among evangelical Protestant voters? What do you do in the next 3 weeks to make a difference?
I think it's going to be very hard for the second-tier candidates like Santorum to make a difference, even though the evangelical population in South Carolina is strong, a population that we'll have to pay attention to. I just don't think that Santorum has the organization or the money to propel him forward.
So we're really talking about a race that, barring something highly unexpected, which of course can happen, that is effectively over after Florida.
That would be my assessment.
And mine as well.